Hey guys, DK here. We originally recorded this podcast on June 29th and meant to release it the week before Nationals. However, the subject that we're discussing, reffing, has come up a lot in recent threads in both the tournaments and captains groups on Facebook, so we thought it would be a good idea to upload it early so everybody can hear the full discussion between myself, Guy Next Door, and Tragedy about the recent experiences in Brisbane switching to a slightly different reffing system. So yes, we are talking to you from the future. Deal with it.
Welcome back to the Resupply with me, Guy Next Door.
And me, soon to be Fireball DK.
Bringing you your weekly double tap of all things Space Marines and Laser Force. Oh man, it's almost upon us.
It's so close, Steve-O. So close,
man. Like, as soon as I bought my ticket to this year's Nats, because originally I wasn't going to come, and as soon as I bought my ticket, I was like, okay, it'll be good. It'll be good. And then in the last couple of weeks, I'm just like, holy fuck, like, Nationals is soon. I feel fucking amped.
I mean, it took all of about an episode and a half to convince you to buy your ticket.
Yeah, so. Well, I mean, you know, that happens. I've been getting messages throughout the last couple of weeks, people going like, goddamn podcast is like making me FOMO hard. So, you know, it's part of the charm, I guess. It's one of the many services we provide on the podcast.
I'm glad we're doing something right.
That's right. So at the time of this podcast is coming out, Nats is next week, right?
Yeah, we're trying to predict the future right now, but it will be very soon in any case, either next week or the week after that. So right. It will be very close on the heels of when this podcast airs.
That's right. So after this one, we'll probably start doing podcasts from Nationals. We're going to try and record the weekend before Nat starts, and then time permitting, we'll record at Lasers throughout the week of Nats, and obviously, you know, there'll be plenty of people Facebook living and all that fun stuff that we've started doing over the last couple of years. So, yeah, it'll be as in depth as the last couple. So for those who decided not to come, you know, at least you'll be connected some way, rather than just watching the scoreboards and, you know, Twitch chat.
And if you're lucky, I'll get a couple of drinks in me to provide a little bit of extra color commentary.
that one's always good. But this week, we there's been some discussion over the way in which the tournaments are governed, specifically the rules that we play by and the penalties associated with breaking those rules. But this week we've got somebody on who probably knows the rules better than any other living Laser Force player. He's been on before, I think, maybe even to talk about rules last year. But let's give a nice welcome back to the granddaddy of of Space Marines, Tragedy out of Brisbane. What up, dog?
Peter!
Hey guys. How's it going?
Good, mate. Good. It's good to have you on again.
It's good to be back.
Yeah, we miss you. We only get to see you like once a year max, so it's always nice to have you on. Although, you know, we get to talk shit in our fantasy chat group, which is okay.
Which you're smashing me on.
I'm sort of like middle average. It's how I live my life. It's middle average. But yeah, we're here. We're not here to talk about fantasy sports. We're here to talk about fantasy warfare. Damn it.
Pew pew.
But yeah, so we defer to you as our community expert on the rules that we play by.
Cool. All right, I'm touched.
Yeah, I mean, there hasn't really been any. There hasn't been any new rules as far as I know, but my understanding is that you guys in the most recent Brisbane League were experimenting with a new referee system where penalties don't deduct the usual 1,000 points and the 5 MVP. They just deactivate the offending player. Is that correct?
That's pretty much right. The software doesn't allow us to not do the points, so that still happens in game. So post game, whoever's doing the stats has to reapply the points. But the idea being is that players are just penalised with penalties not actually worth points. It seems to be flowing a lot better. There's little to no referee discussion after games, and it's so much quicker.
Wow. I know that's like probably one of the bigger negative aspects about nationals is the, or at least it used to be before ref suits, was the time that it took for referees to discuss shit after the fact. It just seemed to drag. It always seems to drag.
There's always something, isn't there?
Yeah. Someone's just like, oh, I can't believe you didn't see that chase, or like, what are you talking about? That wasn't blind, or well, I don't know. It's fucking bullshit. Or that my personal favorite is when somebody who's refereeing, oh yeah, I could have seen this. I think I might have seen this. Well,
yeah. So it's always some of the pedantic aspects about the penalty application, the after game discussions. Did he do it? Didn't he not do it? Did you see it? I saw some of it. Did you see the rest of it? Sort of thing. That's one of the aspects that I wanted to try and reduce, if not eliminate, by just allowing the referees more or less the freedom to penalise because they think something happened. It might not be the best way to put it, but that's basically it. I think you shielded, I hit you. I think you chased, I hit you. But with penalties not being worth points.
Yeah, so I'm curious if the rationale was to try to get referees to be a little bit more bold in choosing to actually make the call in game. Because speaking personally, that's one of the things that frustrates me the most is referees being indecisive in a game and then afterward deciding, oh yeah, I definitely should have called that. Well, if you should have called it in game and you didn't, forget just the penalty on its own, but that allowed the player to take advantage of whatever infraction they had, and maybe they broke an opposing resupply as a result. So just deducting that 1,000 points afterward, in addition to causing all of the butt hurt after game of not having a penalty called, it also might have completely altered the resolution. So was that part of the rationale in doing this?
It definitely was. I mean, there were plenty of aspects that I was trying to address when I wanted to introduce this, and the referees, just giving them a bit more freedom to penalise players, be less indecisive about whether or not they need to do a penalty, and move that onto the referee's perspective. And we all know as players that you have a perspective of someone shielding or chasing you, and the referee is in a different spot. May or may not have seen it, but as referees, you might look at something happening during the game and you go, oh, that might have been a bit dodgy, but I really wasn't in the right position to see it. The idea now being is like, well, previously, I suppose, you gave the benefit of the doubt to the attacking player. And what this system aims to do is actually remove the benefit of the doubt from that attacking player and put it onto the defending player. So what you're doing is you're penalising the person if you think they shielded when they walked in the door, even if you don't have the right perspective. You penalise the player if you think they've gone over a 3-metre mark, even if it's right on the core or the cusp of that tipping point, and you remove the benefit of the doubt from the attacking player.
Have you found that it's had the opposite effect? So I know that a lot of refs are quite tentative to give out, because it's such a hefty thing to ping someone 1,000 points. So with that gone, has it swung the other way? Like, have you found that guys are more penalty happy?
Initially, yeah, it was. I mean, we were getting or seeing 6-7 penalties a game. Some players were being pinged 2 or 3 times. But as the seasons progressed, the referees are lapsing back into the way we used to do things, which is just stand back, look at the screen on their gun, lean on the wall, mutter amongst themselves. And honestly, they're just like, oh, well, yeah, actually, I should have penalised that when it was in games. Like, I actually had it happen to me just last Monday night gone. I was, we got bumped by the opposing heavy weapons. He got in, and as everyone left, the heavy was standing at the T junction, and he was aiming down the leg of the T, and I was the last person out. but because of the way he was standing, which was his normal stance, his gun was actually in front of my face, and I had to limbo under the gun so I could get away. The referee's standing there. He's like literally 1.5 meters behind me, and I'm yelling, "Move, move, move, get out of the way." And the ref did nothing, and I copped a missile for it.
Right.
So, so there's a 600-point turnaround there. And, of course, me being me, I blew my stack, so it was a 1,600-point turnaround.
I wouldn't believe that for a second.
Did you throw a chair?
That was a penalty where the points actually stuck.
Right.
Yeah, so that's a good question to add on to that. So the default assumption now is just penalties are applied in game where it's really more like kind of a foul call in other sports where it's not a major infraction. Maybe you just take the ball out, you stop play, you prevent the sort of player charged with the infraction from taking advantage. Yeah, you alter the flow of the game, but you otherwise don't make any adjustments. But if it's deemed to be something that really does need to be penalized and have a point value applied to it to really discourage them from doing that, you can go ahead and keep that after the game.
That's right. So the premise behind that is that if the referee believes in his opinion that the player has deliberately breached the rules, so say, for example, they're squatting behind a wall and they stick their arms up in the air and shoot over it without showing any shoulders, well, we'll let you keep that 1,000 points, thank you, sunshine. Deliberate breaches definitely should warrant still being penalised. Just like, you give them a penalty for it, then contact them after the game.
So how do you, I guess then you get into that murky grey area of what somebody's point of view is, right? What someone's opinion of whether or not that was deliberate. Well, I guess it's easy in that example if someone just blatantly sticks their gun around a corner or over a wall. Obviously, that's pretty deliberate. But things like chasing. Chasing's already such a complex rule. So to add in any ambiguity about how the referee kind of sees the rule, has that presented any issues, or do you guys think that?
No, it hasn't. And again, it's just down to the referees paying attention when it comes to just applying the penalty. But well, certainly a lot of the queries that I was getting before we implemented this was, how are you going to stop people just taking advantage of this and deliberately breaking the rules, deliberately chasing or deliberately shielding? And it's like, well, if they're going to do something like that, the referee's going to know that it was, an effort to really take advantage of the no point penalty and can still apply it. So if a referee sees a chase that's 5, 6, 7 meters and they go in and specifically target one person that they really can't, then yes, that penalty can still be applied. But mostly, as we know, chases and shields, the two most common penalties that people are done for are more or less accidental, and it comes down to misjudging the distance that they've travelled, misjudging the distance that the opponent's travelled, not knowing the opponent's travelled that distance full stop.
Yeah,
and shielding being just an action of their position relative to the field and not quite knowing that they're not showing what they need to.
Yeah, or that reflect step back shot that a lot of guys will do, and that's put them in a shitty position. I suppose I see that. If you think about it, like how you said, DK, about it being like a foul or like a travel call or something in basketball, it's not a biggie. Obviously, it's a rule infraction, but it's not doesn't warrant 1,000 points, right? Unless it's deliberate.
It's a quick turnover. It changes the momentum of the game momentarily, but there's 100 other moments in the game where something could swing right back, and it's not, oh my God, I just lost 1,000 points. How am I going to make that up? I'm already thinking about how I'm going to argue this after the game that no, I didn't really chase, all that kind of stuff. So I feel like that could definitely be a real improvement. And yeah, I would agree that in most cases, especially for chases and shields, it isn't deliberate. But if somebody is getting, 4 or 5 penalties for the same thing in a game, well, yeah, now maybe some loss of points is warranted because they clearly are not kind of learning their lesson, so to speak. But if it's just a one-off or something like that, I think that could be a real improvement, is not to make it so punitive that A, players are going to get really mad, and B, referees are afraid to pull the trigger as a result. Because I know, having spoken to referees in the past, at least from my own side or newer players, there is a real reluctance to call penalties, especially on more experienced players, because they feel that they're simply going to be overruled after the game. So what was the point of them doing anything in the first place?
Well, that's how like I've kind of always felt like we've been playing this game for a long time now, and every nationals as a referee, I always feel very apprehensive about giving out penalties, because it's such a big penalty. Like 1,000 points is a massive difference.
It's like getting shots 20 times.
There you have it, kids. But yeah, like it can be a big, a massive swing. So as a ref, I've always kind of thought, wow, I need to be 100% sure that this thing happened. I mean, you should always be 100% sure that a thing happened. But there's a little bit more leniency now, I guess, if you do make a mistake as a ref. It's not gonna.
Well, there's the thing. You don't need to be 100% sure. When we go back to the accidental aspect of how most of our penalties most of our rules are broken, and then how the penalties apply. With that is with the advent of the referees being able to take people in game. Is it really worth 1,000 points? Is the 8 seconds just enough? And so far, the results are leaning towards absolutely. Yeah, it's worth the 8 seconds, but it ain't worth 1,000 points.
Because it's
that's a good point, because the original impetus for the hefty penalties was, well, by cheating you really gained a big advantage in the game, so this point is to make up for any advantage you might have gained, and then some, to discourage you from doing it. But if you can stop it from happening and just shut down them taking any advantage, then why do you really need the extra points on top of that?
Yep. So we encourage the referees, obviously, to pay more attention, but also
this is the trash version of keep your gun up. Referees, pay some fucking attention.
Just watch what's going on. Pay attention to what's going in and out. And if you believe someone probably broke the rules, you don't need to be 100%. Just hit them. All right. If you made a mistake, you made a mistake. If they didn't break the rules, oh well, it's 8 seconds off their time. They didn't lose points for it.
Right on.
And, if they were good enough to break into the resup once, they can do it again.
That's right. We're 9 weeks into a 10-week season, and we've had one person blow up because of being penalised. We've had one person blow up because the opponent wasn't penalised. Only one of them was me, by the way. With near non-ref discussions at the end of the games, we're averaging 6 games inside 2 hours.
Wow.
And the feedback I'm getting from other players is that the season's much more relaxed. Everybody's happy, aside from winning or losing. But there's little angst. People aren't yelling at each other. When someone does get penalised, they just go, "Oh, what was that for?" "Oh, you chase someone." "Oh, okay." If they disagree, we have a bit of a discussion after the game, and off you go.
I suppose it's less of a thing to fight for after the game to try and rescind 1,000 points, because at the end of the game you're just like, well, I mean, 8 seconds, whatever, I'll live with it, I'll cop that.
Yeah, well, they don't like it when it happens in game, but
of course,
after the game it's forgotten.
Yeah. I would imagine even partway through the game, unless it was a massive momentous swing, in which case that's the point of the penalty. Yeah. Well, I mean, that sounds pretty positive, especially if you are, as a result, getting to play more games, or more games in a shorter period of time. Because, I mean, that's obviously been one of the discussions around this year's Nats, about the length of the days that we're playing to. So, whatever we could do, if we could chop each day by an hour, that would be marvelous.
Yeah, because the 3 big questions that I had, just based on my experience with reffing and running tournaments in the past, is how can we improve reffing? Has this made the game resolution quicker? Is there less arguing over calls as a result? And it sounds like the answers are pretty definitive. It's improved reffing, maybe not 100%, but it has probably made things better. game resolution is quicker and there's less arguing over calls. Would you say that's a fair assumption there, Shraj?
That's a yes all round.
Perfect. I mean, if you're getting unanimous yeses, then why would you not want to do it?
That's right. And once players, because if we take this into the tournament, players are still going to have a little bit of getting used to the fact that they're being penalised for something they're not sure that they've done. Once they realise or come to realise that it's really not affecting their point score, they just got to get away and then they can come back and attack again. Then it certainly becomes a lot more calm and relaxed.
So
I mean that was going to be my next question, is just, would you suggest that we adopt this for the upcoming nationals?
I honestly can't see how it would hurt. If I think that the more angsty players that are commonly in the tournaments aren't going to be as angry when they get penalised, it's going to help everybody else, because they're not going to be walking on eggshells around these people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, like I said, is far and away one of my biggest concerns with tournaments. And I think reffing generally is kind of everybody's least favorite part, but it has to be done. And if there's anything we can do to improve that experience and make it easier, then I am 100% in favor of positive changes there.
Absolutely. How did this come about? Like, whose brainchild was this?
Well, I had a thought about it when we had an incident in Brisbane last year where those familiar with the Brisbane field will know this, but for those who aren't, we've got a section in the back right, left-hand corner of the field, which is called the Blue Tower. And from the Blue Tower, you can access through the back, through the vortex, which takes you to the bridge. You turn right, you come to the Red Tower. You get across the Red Tower to the obs deck. You turn right, you're back to the Blue Tower. So it's basically a large rectangle. So Rusty and Taipan were in the Blue Tower, and I was in there as a referee. And Rusty shot Taipan, who ran down the obs deck into the Red Tower, which is about a distance of about 5 metres. Now, I couldn't see Taipan for the most part. I could see the top of his head from my vantage point on the Blue Tower and where he'd positioned himself. And then from the bridge section, along comes Rusty's other three-head, who trundles into the Red Tower, missiles Taipan. Now, how Taipan or why Taipan did not try to dodge or avoid this missile, I can only guess. My biggest assumption is that he thought he was about to reactivate, or he thought he would reactivate while the missile was going off. In the end, he was missiled. Rusty then travelled from behind me at the obs deck, past Taipan, didn't target him at that point, ran all the way down to the other end of the obs deck to where the new tower is, and proceeded to attack Taipan's resupply. Taipan ran into the obs deck, ran behind Rusty, yelling all the way, I still haven't come up, still haven't come up, still haven't come up. And Rusty gets to the other end of the new tower, shoots all the resupply, turns around and shoots Taipan.
Cheater!
Well, Taipan blew up. But I couldn't penalise Rusty based on the way we were doing the rules, because I couldn't see whether or not Taipan's suit reactivated, because the time that it was between from when he was deactivated by Rusty to when he was missiled was really on that 8-second mark. I don't know if his suit reactivated. I couldn't see him. So now Taipan blew up. Actually, it actually caused Taipan to quit Laser Force. He left. He did come back for a couple of games at the end of the season to see it out and finish the finals, but he hasn't been back for much more than social games since.
Wow.
Yeah, but I couldn't penalise him. I could penalise him for his blow up, but I couldn't penalise Rusty,
right?
Because I couldn't tell if he chased Taipan or not. But that got me to thinking. Look, we need a way, first of all, to get the referees to pay a bit more attention, give them more freedom to penalise things that they think might have happened, reduce the discussions after the game by just saying, look, let's just not have it if we don't need it, and you get someone on an assumption. So if I switch it around, in this particular scenario, Rusty had been given the benefit of the doubt as to whether or not he chased Taipan. In this way, I actually do think that Taipan didn't reactivate, and I think then that Rusty managed to chase him because of that. So I would have tagged Rusty as soon as he targeted Taipan. But where Rusty would have lost 1,000 points and his momentum, and Taipan wouldn't have blown up. In this case, Rusty just would have lost his momentum, Taipan wouldn't have blown up and the game could have continued. So that got me thinking, look, how can we do it better? What can we do better? And it's taken me history-wise all the way back to when we had the Laser Force forums and the arguments that we used to have over, how chasing penalties are applied and what is or isn't a chase, and what do you do about when someone doesn't realise that they've actually chased somebody. And it led me to the process of, hey, look, let's just give the referees more freedom and let's take the points out of it.
Yeah, good point.
And it's basically worked.
I mean, like it's pretty great that a game that's had a rule set like this for like a couple of decades now. That something like this, it almost seems like game changing from a tournament perspective, because it's such a it's such a paradigm shift. Like it takes all of the pressure away from the referees. My only thing with that example that you were saying was, what happens if if Taipan's suit actually did come up, and then he was put down, but you didn't see that happen, and then you break Rusty's momentum. Like that's potentially game changing. He's in on a resupply, potentially kicking them out of where they are.
Well, that's definitely one of the possible downsides, and it's certainly going to happen. But it's a consequence of removing the benefit of the doubt,
right?
Or shifting where that benefit goes to,
right?
And it's all down to really to the referee's perspective and his opinion.
Okay. And that's probably one of the other things with our scene. Obviously, there's always gaps between experience and inexperience, especially when it comes to refereeing, because a lot of sites don't have the regular leagues where they can actually train their guys on how to ref. Like it is a reasonably big deal. So with the newer refs, I suppose it makes things a little easier for them because there's less pressure on them to fuck it up. If they do, it's not such a big deal than the other way.
That's our one swear word for the PG-13 meeting.
Oh man, I'm all over that fucking thing.
There was already one earlier. We've already got
demonetized. That's all right. I swear on purpose to make sure Beans doesn't profit from our hard work. But yeah.
Well, that was one other point of clarity that I wanted to have, because I was talking to Rusty about this a bit off air when we did the last podcast about some of the changes that had been made to reffing. And one thing that I had heard was that in the kind of run up to the discussion of this, there was sort of a bit of clarity that had been made on, well, the referee still needs to see the infraction happen. They don't need to think that an infraction is about to happen. You don't want them
Correct.
taking preemptive action. You do want them to have observed an infraction.
Yeah, preemptive action was one of the things that I had touted as wanting to try. It quickly got shouted down, so it was left out. But the idea behind the preemptive stuff, and believe me, kids, it's not happening this way. But there are certain times when you as a referee will be standing in a position, and you know that one of the players that are down, deactivated in front of you, has backtracked out, run back in without anyone from the opposition team in sight, or they've literally just run from one point of the field, come into your field of view and run into where you are and propped. And then once they're out of sight, along trundles one of the opposition who comes along the path, but you can't penalise him until he actually shoots that guy.
Mm-hmm.
The preemptive thought that I wanted to try was, if you see something like this happen and you know for an absolute fact that if he gets in there, he's going to penalise, he's going to shoot that guy, you just hit him early. You stop that person being chased. You stop him from losing a life, which is even more important if that poor guy's a medic. And you stop all that action from happening. You give that guy a chance to reactivate. As I said, they got shouted down because there were too many ways that it could go wrong, which is fine.
Yeah, I definitely see your perspective on that. But yeah, at the same time, that does kind of open it up to other kinds of abuses or referees maybe overstepping the line. We don't want to get into, new Minority Report surveillance state kind of
Hell Hydra.
I mean, look, it could still have an application, but it would really take the referees to be highly experienced and highly observant,
which we don't have really, like, because the player base is changing all the time, and yeah, like I say, like not everyone gets to play a regular league traj, but yeah, so like people, it's an interesting thing to get used to, reffing a game.
Well, some of us don't even get to play regular laser tag, Steve.
Shit. I suppose like the flip side of that is, you know, if it is the medic that's being targeted, and you know, I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I figure most people have like reasonably strong ethics, and so we try and play the game as cleanly as we can. Most infractions are done by accident, like you say. If you do get, you know, one player who's coming in to specifically shoot the medic on a track and does it multiple times, that's where, you know, the deliberate penalty comes into play, I guess.
Well, that was shooting the medic on a chase is one of the things that I believe that still should be allowed as a points penalty, whether you know or you don't. Yeah, it's one of the bugs that need to be ironed out. But if a chase results in a medic getting shot, then I think there should be some form of punishment still to be applied there.
It's such a game changer to have that, right? Like if you can run in and penalty be damned, I'm going to go in and I'm going to kill the medic. Like, yeah, that's a big thing. That's a pretty big thing.
Yeah, that's what we don't want.
But again, you know, most people benefit of the doubt. We're all good people here. None of us cheat on purpose.
So some additional punishment. I would recommend a booting.
A boot? Yeah, I get it. I get that reference.
I understood that reference.
Right on. So, what else? What else did you want to touch on?
Well, there are still penalties that attract points, regardless of
right, of course,
of the system. So obviously, the deliberate penalties are still going to attract points. You know, if the referee's opinion says, "Nah, I reckon you were shielding before you walked in the door, you stuck your gun around the corner, shot everybody, and then you stepped in and said, 'Hi, here I am.'" No, you get penalised for that. Swearing still attracts points penalty. Yeah, no fucking swearing, kids. All right. Physical abuse.
Now,
so you know,
would throwing a chair come under physical abuse?
That's actually quite borderline, because if you threw a chair and the referees were still in discussion, then the game's still in progress. So yes, you'd get a physical abuse penalty, but under this system, the referees just walk out. So if you time it just right, you might get away with it.
All right, good to hear. Well, I mean, that's a hypothetical. I don't know anyone who's stupid enough to do that.
Oh, yeah, look, what did the chair do to deserve it anyway?
Laser tag facilities, jeez.
But what did the chair do to deserve it anyway?
Well, no, I blame the floor.
Looking at that guy funny.
The floor was super slippery. I was just trying to push the chair in.
Oh, right. Yeah, I heard that the chair was looking at someone funny.
Yeah, it called me a racial slur. I didn't like it.
Oh, those Aussie chairs, I tell you what.
Yeah, the most racist of all the chairs.
And as I said, chasing where the medic's been targeted or tagged is something that I think needs a bit of attention and might need some ironing out. And the last one would be abuse directed at the referees.
Yeah.
Like I did on Monday.
For sure.
I'm going to murder you in your sleep.
Pet peeve of mine.
Oh, for God's sakes, just open your eyes.
I was just asking, Riff, did you see that?
Keep your gun up, even if you're a referee.
Yeah, so, okay. I mean, it sounds to me that, like, it's wholeheartedly positive. So, I mean, yeah, I don't see why it would be a bad thing to implement it into this tournament, especially if you guys have found success.
So speaking as only one captain among many, I would definitely recommend that we strongly consider implementing this from this tournament, but I can't guarantee it since there hasn't been any kind of full committee vote on this. But hopefully the other captains will have had a chance to listen to this in the meantime, and we'll be discussing it in group. But I really do think anything that can speed up game resolution, improve reffing, and make it less angsty, as Peter suggested, is going to be a real improvement for the tournament and could just be a kind of model going forward.
Yeah, and from
it's not as though reffing hasn't evolved over time. I'm sure all of us remember way back in the day when the penalty resolution was you got the captains together, they decided what they wanted to call in the game, they submitted to the referees, and the referees had to confer among themselves.
Right.
Did you see any of these penalties?
That's right. That was the fucking worst.
So it could be worse, kids.
Oh, it's good to see that we've evolved over time.
I mean, with the added advantage of ref packs, I mean, it's perfect.
The ref suits were such a positive innovation. I was really happy to see those. I was a little bit nervous at first, but almost immediately when I saw them in action, I was like, this is such a better system of doing things. And the potential obviously was there. And I think this is what's happening now is we're starting to iron out, okay, here's the potential for how these can actually be used effectively to ensure that the game is played fairly, but without the kind of side drama of the lost points and hurt feelings.
And the funny thing is that when the referee suits were introduced, there was still opposition to using them all over the world.
I recall.
Simply because, they're open to abuse. You can just shoot anybody and say that they did a penalty, and it hasn't happened. And I got the same kind of opposition towards this penalty resolution system where, they were saying, look, players can abuse the system. It's not going to be worth any points to them. They might as well just go and cheat anyway. So, we turned that around by saying, no, if the refs think it's deliberate, you're going to get points anyway. And the abuse hasn't happened. The suspected abuse, I've not seen or heard of one person deliberately abusing the system to gain an advantage.
It's because everyone in Brisbane is wholesome. Good moral fibre in Brisbane.
Yeah, we only act like that when you
let's
come
not
to
go
visit.
too far here.
We only act like that when Steve comes to visit.
That's right. It's because you
It's not
love
like I've
me.
ever
We're at
heard
each
Peter
other's throats.
yell loudly at somebody to shut up during a captain's meeting or something like that.
I mean, to be fair, Trade, you're a lot calmer now than you used to be. So
Comes with age, mate.
yeah. I'm just about to ease into my old age calmness.
Give me another year and 3 months, and I'll be in my dotage.
Oh, I thought you were going to say dead.
Almost.
First dead player to play Laser Force. It's a real achievement, everybody.
Just put a ref back on him.
We got to. Where I've next been toying with the idea of removing the stairs from the Brisbane Laser Force field because they don't suit the Zimmer frame.
I mean, you could have.
I'm in favor of getting rid of all stairs in Laser Force arenas just as a general principle. So you have my
Absolutely.
support on that.
And then I've got to introduce a campaign for one-headed phases so I can hold the Zimmer frame and shoot at the same time.
Just what you need is like some sort of mount, and so you turn the phaser into a turret on your Zimmer frame.
Oh yeah, that'll work. And just rig it to a pedal so I just hold the Zimmer frame with two hands, turn around.
Now, can you explain for the Yanks in the audience what a Zimmer frame is?
It's a walking frame.
What
And
do you
it
guys
could
call it?
have
I think we just call it a walker over here in the States.
a walker. And then, there's like three different types. So you have a walker where you literally have to step forward, like Mole Man does in Simpsons. So he pushes it forward, steps into it, pushes it. You can have one with four wheels. So you're literally leaning on the damn thing while you're walking forward, and that's taking all your weight. And I've seen ones with only two wheels on them, so front or back.
Right.
So you can maneuver it more easily, but you still need to push it forward, like almost like Mole Man does to get going.
That's the Resupply's.
Words.
That's the Resupply's hot take on Zimmer frames. If you need some Zimmer frame advice, hit up Traj on Facebook. I'm sure he'll help you out.
Yeah, I was imagining more like the rig that Ripley uses in Aliens.
Well, that's the fourth type of Zimmer frame.
Because I'm closer to a nursing home, I've been investigating them for possible residential aspects, and of course I've seen a lot of them around.
Yeah, they're like, have you come here to pick up your new Zimmer frame? No, bitch. I'm not 50 yet.
I'm still designing it to the perfect Zimmer frame.
That will be standard Laser Force equipment by the 2025 Nats, guaranteed.
So, have you got anything else you wanted to add, DK, or any other questions?
Well, I think that was a good summary, but go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, well, actually, we touched on the time aspect earlier, and this is it kind of connects to everything as well. So we don't have referee meetings, as we said, but we do, but only when they're necessary to say, look, we need to apply points to something in the game. Obviously, if someone has been behaving pretty badly in the game, the refs are going to have to get together and discuss what sort of penalty should be applied. And hopefully, it won't take 3 hours like it has in the past. But as I touched on earlier, the games we're pretty much averaging 6 full SM5 games, so 6 15-minute SM5 games in about 2 hours. We start at 7, we're finishing around 9:15 with these 6 games. And these are matches that are being played back to back, not an alternate game system like you can do with 6 teams, because we've only got 5 teams playing at the moment.
Right.
So even that time saving is massive when it comes to getting through these games quickly without eliminations.
I think that will be a big selling point for everyone involved, because if we could not have to be at Revolutions for 14 or 15 hours a day, I think players will be a lot happier.
Yeah, that's a brutal amount of time, man.
But we love laser tag, so we will definitely put up with it.
So what happens? What happens after the match with the refs? Do they just disperse, or?
Yeah, the refs are just encouraged to disperse. If the players have a query as to why they were penalised in game, they have been free to approach the refs and say, "Hey, what was this for?" Then I have seen, and I've been involved also in discussions where the player didn't think it was a penalty, it was or it wasn't, and I usually end the conversation with, "Oh, well, what does it matter? It's not worth points anyway." But really, for the player's peace of mind, it can't hurt for them to know what they did wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's always usually my sticking point, is that anytime I've been penalized in the past, it's usually just a very quick query to the referee of, what was that for? Or sometimes just clarifying that was for a chase, right? Or that was for a shield, right? Or something like that, just so I'm aware of some adjustment I need to make if I'm coming in at a certain angle or something like that.
Or we've got a couple of relatively fresh Nats players on my team for this year. They played last year. That was their first Nats last year. But even still, if they are doing, if there are infractions or if there are repeat infractions, as a captain, you kind of want to use that as a teaching moment for your guys. Like if you can pull them aside and say, "Hey, look, just come around the corner a little cleaner," or whatever. Like, I mean, most people have been playing a while, so they should know how to play this game properly. But, sometimes Nats amps people up, so they can do silly things.
Yeah. Don't be such a fat ass and block the entire hallway.
Yeah,
et cetera,
leech.
et cetera.
Smallest dude on our team gets pinged for a block.
Yeah, but if players are being penalised frequently because they've got a dodgy technique that means that they're possibly or probably shielding, then it gives them a much greater chance to fix that aspect of their game too.
True,
because they're copying those penalties. They find out what it is. The captain can have a talk to them, and they can adjust how their stance is so that it doesn't happen.
So.
Because that 8-second downtime still has an effect on how the game's played.
So in that sort of scenario, I mean, where in the past multiple infractions would warrant like a conduct penalty, if there's no sort of ref meeting or anything after that, like have you guys found that there's, I mean, conducts are like, they don't happen that often, but has it sort of...
Well, we haven't had any games where players have been penalised so much in game that they need to also have a conduct penalty. I think the most anyone copped was 3 in a game, and they were actually for all different things. But we did have one player who's actually copped a conduct penalty for his shielding because he'd been warned by this particular ref 3 or 4 times in the preceding weeks up to this game, and then he did exactly the same thing again. He camps in the same spot in the helm. He shoots out of it towards the vortex. The referees pinged him a couple of times, told him, "Look, if you do this again, you are going to cop points." And lo and behold, the next week he does it. And it took a little bit of discussion to actually get it out of the ref that it has actually happened in the past, and I'm making these points stick. This is the reason why, and the 1,000 points actually stuck. And hopefully, he's going to adjust the way he stands in the helm to avoid shielding again.
So how does that?
Just having to have that discussion once rather than multiple times, I think, is already a big improvement.
Yeah, but then like, how is that kind of tracked? Like, if it's that player who's doing this in multiple games.
Well, in this case, it was a single referee who'd been observing this player over the course of these 3 or 4 weeks. But just like any other tournament, you can see players penalised for shielding multiple times through a tournament, and nothing more ever happens.
Yeah, true.
And it may take a written warning to the player, and well,
I'm gonna write you a nasty letter
in writing. I don't literally mean in writing here. You have been shielding. Don't do it again. Hand the paper to the player. No, I mean it gets written down on the scorecards. It gets noted so that the referees themselves know when they're going into a game where this player is participating to keep an eye on what they're doing, and if they do shield, then these are now worth points. But that's a system that I don't think we've come up with yet. That's viable.
To be fair, though, I guess that's kind of that's more the exception than the norm, right? Like that's not going to happen. If at all.
You'd like to think so.
Yeah. I mean, there's not that many times where conduct penalties are handed out unless someone's pistol whipped someone or gone on a massive abusive tirade or whatever. Although I do recall Lone Soul out of Auckland getting done for multiple tilting penalties. I think he got 3 in a conduct in one game. Just because at the time he was too skinny and twisted, so the suit didn't actually fit on him properly.
So obviously this wasn't last year.
That wasn't last year. You're a real dick, DK.
Sorry,
Didn't that happen to Virus in Auckland as well?
I don't know about Virus. It was definitely happened to Lone Soul. But he's on the way down, DK. He's in shape. He's getting fine and fit.
Man, remember when we all used to be skinny? That was weird.
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah. Our uniforms have been ordered for the competition, and Rusty made my order as extra dad bod.
There you have it, kids.
we just call that standard size over here in the States.
Tragedy's new code name.
Dad bod.
Dad bod. Standard dad bod. Cool. Well, I mean, it sounds really positive. Like I'm with you, DK. I'd be well keen to have a discussion with the other captains, and at the very least we trial it. Because what else is Nets for if not for trialing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of upset that I didn't think of this, because I've always been of the mind when we were doing our leagues in Sacramento that, if possible, have the referees, warn players when they're about to break the rules, so that there doesn't have to be this long kind of discussion and angst over penalties, and just skipping the intermediate step and making the penalties worth 0 points unless it's particularly egregious. Seemed like an obvious solution, and yet didn't think of it. So, more power to you, Traj.
Well, if we're going to trial it, we've got plenty of practice games, I hope, before the tournament actually starts. So, these teams get into practice. Let's get practice refs in too.
Well, do we? Are we just practicing on the Sunday, or
we're all going out for our pizza coma on Saturday night. But my hope is that we'll maybe get to play some late night games after we've all had our fill, and we can roll ourselves through the maze for at least a few games.
So it'll be
at that point
pizza dinner, Laser Force, emergency room for Steve, and then recovery all Sunday.
Exactly.
Are we not getting Laser Force, pizza dinner, Laser Force, and then
emergency
recovery room for Steve?
I guess it just depends on how busy Revolution is during the day on Saturday. Because I think we're meeting at, I don't remember if it's 7 p.m., 8 p.m., whatever it is, and then if we could get in some games before that, that'd be great, because I'm sure my guys would definitely be keen for that, because we will have played very little in the intermediate time.
Yeah, pretty sure my guys will be too. The Saturday normally is the day where people kind of gather at Lasers and kind of jump in for games here and there. But yeah, it should. I think it'll work out.
Awesome.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Trash, for coming on and sort of giving us the heads up on the updated rules and hopefully the updated way that we run refs at nationals. Yeah. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, good. Well, that'll do us for this week, kids. I've been Guy Next Door.
And I've been DK.
Always remember to backtrack, kids. We'll see you next week at
See you
Nationals.
soon.
Nationals!
Woo!
Yeah.